What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. This is the college basketball national championship betting preview. I'm Stucky, and joining me for one last time this season, my co-host Mike Calabrese and BJ Cunningham. It's a bittersweet day, boys. Last time I'll see your handsome faces until next year, next season. Well, hopefully I'll see you in the interim. But as far as talking college basketball is concerned, this is it. Mike, we went head-to-head on San Diego State FAU. It was a great game. FAU ended up covering. San Diego State won. I do want to shout you out for for bringing up the Bradley prop, which almost hit within like the first 2 minutes.
Yeah,
Once that first three went in, I said, all right, this Bradley prop's good. And then he hit the second three and the third three, and I was like, man, what a call up by Mike. But thoughts on the Final Four games and just in general, how are you?
I'm good. I loved, obviously, the FAU game. I would have preferred the cover there at the end, but all we're hoping for at the end of a college basketball season is just some great basketball. I mean, I had lots of different props going. Bradley living up to the hype and not shrinking in the moment, I thought was huge. To be honest, though, I thought I had an absolute deadlock on San Diego State, a read on what they needed to win, what they would do in different scenarios. And then two things happened. One, they fall down by 14, and you got to think, based on their preferred pace and the fact that Trammell was basically invisible for the majority of the game, that they weren't going to have enough to get back in it, but they proved that they were able to do that. And then the second part, I talk up Brian Dutcher so much. As soon as they get that rebound down one, I'm like, all right, he's going to call a timeout. He's going to have a set play. It's going to be, and then he's just like, the hell with it. Like, he just go with it. Everyone get downhill. The three bigs crash the rim, get a shot on the net, and ended up working for him. So more power to him. I'm wondering, in terms of emotional capital, if they have anything left against this juggernaut that they're going to run into on Monday night. But as it stands right now, just like bask in the moment, San Diego State, you deserve it. And they gave one of the best games of the year, on the FAU side as well. So just fantastic. And it certainly was nice that it balanced out what ended up being another runaway win for UConn. So it didn't feel as though we were shortchanged here in the final.
Deja vu, just like the late game, UConn just blowing out somebody. They have been on an absolute tear. I think it worked out for San Diego State. Now, and then there was a split second where, as someone who had FAU, I was like, fine, as long as they just take the last shot. I thought they weren't going to get the shot off, and then he hits a crazy tough jumper. But I think I would have fouled when FAU got the ball. It was like a 6-7 second differential. I could argue both ways. I could see both ways. And once you let it go like 15, 16 seconds, then I think you got to play it out. It ended up working out for them. You could argue that FAU went too fast and they should have held it longer, but that was kind of their MO all game, right? Like being aggressive, and you don't want to get late in the shot clock against San Diego State. So I can't fault them that much for going maybe a tad early just from a math perspective. But yeah, it was a great game. And then we had the UConn juggernaut that just puts games away, and then it's never in doubt. And people are saying like there's no good teams once Alabama. I mean, UConn is a great team, and they are just reminiscent of '96 Kentucky, that UNC team, back in 2009, the Villanova team, like the teams that just beat everyone by double digits en route to a title. We'll see if UConn can finish the job. BJ, before we get to that game, any thoughts on the Final Four and how are you?
Yeah, no, I thought the San Diego State Florida Atlantic game was incredible, and it felt kind of weird. Like Michael was saying, like once San Diego State went down, it was like, okay, then they're pretty much toast, right? Because their offense is not good enough to bring them all the way back. And then they just, like, the scoring to begin that game was insane. Like they were just trading bucket after bucket after bucket. And I played a live under, and I hit it by half a point, but I felt like dirty getting out of there, just being like, oh my gosh, how did I actually hit this?
So you were team definitely don't foul. That worked out for you at the end.
I towards the end, when like it started getting to butt clenching time and they started to take longer possessions, and once we got under 5 minutes, I was like, okay, like maybe this can actually happen. If it stays close and like teams aren't fouling, like maybe I have a shot here. So yeah. And then I saw a quote after the game, the post-game interview. Brian Dutcher was like, yeah, I just ran out of offensive plays. So I just decided to go. Like none of their offensive players were on the floor. Like they had a very defensive set on there to stop FAU. And then Bradley was on the bench and they're just like, yeah, let's just go. Whatever. Who cares? It's crazy. So that was an incredible game. And yeah, UConn, just a complete juggernaut. To hold that Miami offense the way they've been playing to as low of a points per possession that they did was just an absolutely incredible job. So
59 points. He
yeah,
would just put up 90 with ease against Texas and UConn and Indiana.
There's a few possessions with Wong where he was going 100 miles an hour and they were multiple screens and he still would run into Klingon or, one of the other bigs. And he just kind of had that look on his face like, this is all we got. We're playing every single angle and they're defending everything. And that's why I'm just kind of like terrified of playing anything on the overside in this game, because if the UConn defense plays like that, San Diego State's going to score like 48 points in this game. It's going to be impossible to get any buckets in the half court.
Yeah. All right, let's get to that game. 9:20 Eastern on CBS, the final game of the year. It's been a fun ride with you guys and everyone who tunes in. You guys are the ones who make the podcast. Appreciate you listening. We'll do some giveaways at the end of the show. Appreciate everyone who gives 5-star reviews. As it stands right now, Connecticut 7.5 point favorite. Over under 132.5. Opened 130.5. I think this is just from a numbers perspective, it's a tad high. Like I'm a little over 6, but do I have any interest in getting in front of this UConn train? No. Like if I was to bet them, would I be buying them at their very peak, like they're just blowing out everyone? Maybe. But sometimes we see these teams, like I just mentioned, that are just on fire on a different level than everyone else. And I have no interest in getting in front of this Huskies train. Mike, I'll go to you. Thoughts on the side? You said that you would have a fear of going over because, number one, UConn's defense is just playing so well, and that San Diego State offense can go into droughts. And then also, if Connecticut beats another opponent by double digits, it's going to be tough for this game to go over. I also assume that San Diego State knows that they have to grind this down to a complete halt and limit the possessions, which will be working in the under's favor. Any general thoughts on the side?
Yeah, I think that's why under is my top play. On the side element of it, I took bets in college. It's when I really started to kind of like build up my appreciation for how you should think about betting in the case of an entire season. Like I was setting and adjusting NFL lines every Sunday, and that really gave me a nice window into, the overinflation or how much you're paying for favorites. Obviously, the markets have gotten better as the internet age has advanced. But the point that you brought up, the year that I was doing that was during the Patriots run when they went undefeated. And I was moving these point spreads 3 and 4 points. It didn't matter because everybody was like, well, they're just going to crush the Jets. They're going to crush Miami. And they did, which is why I was kind of surprised. So my number, as the seconds were ticking away against Miami, my number was UConn -9. And I realized that I was high on the market on that side. I still think there's a chance that it gets to 8.5 by tip-off. I was shocked that some books opened at 6.5. It's like, how can you have that kind of...
Who's not betting UConn right now, too? Just a
right,
casual
exactly.
bettor, too.
And you see it in the action app right now. 88% of the money is on UConn on the side. So it's like this number is only going to continue to bubble up as of, recording right now. It's at 8 in a lot of spots here in Pennsylvania. I think that's going to go even higher. And to be honest, like this is the kind of game where, as I mentioned, I'm circling the total. I think the UConn defense is what gets lost in all of this, is that they've been so dominant on the glass. They've been so efficient in their backcourt, but their defense just choked the life out of Miami. And that's, by far the best group of guards that they faced during this tournament run. They made them look incredibly mediocre. So I'm going to go under there, and then I'll probably go on an alternate number. If it sits in this 7.5 range, let's get 3-1 on my money for UConn -15. Like, let's go for another blowout. Because as you mentioned, some of those teams, the UNC team, the Nova team from 18 that covered every game by double digits, they beat Michigan by, I want to say, 17 in the title game. So let's go ahead and get a little bit froggy here with one more exotic. And I think I'll go alternate spread on the Huskies.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, on the podcast, UConn was one of our futures, which hopefully gets the window. So if people have hedge questions, if you have San Diego State, you're lucky to have like a good San Diego State ticket. I would hedge just because
so hand up right now. I got,
you have San Diego State. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I got San Diego State, but if the number's 8, like I don't know how much, like I can take a huge chunk out of the San Diego State future and just take a little nibble, which I may end up doing. But I was just hoping for any, like Miami obviously to get through or one injury or something. But at this point, just not many opportunities unless I keep my money on the sideline, hope for like a 6-0 run to start the game for San Diego State.
Yeah, or that's a good point. Like live second half, and you got to look back to why you bet it. Like you don't always have to hedge. If it's like, what is your financial situation? How much would it be life-changing money? Why did you bet it originally? Most of the time, just let it ride. But if you want to hedge, did something change with the team? Like these are the reasons that you might want to hedge. If you want to, just lock up what you bet on it, or if you just really like UConn and don't think San Diego State has a chance, then yeah, maybe you can hedge some off. If you have a UConn ticket, again, a lot like you're sitting with the UConn, whatever it is, 20, 30 to 1. They're 7.5-point favorites in the final. That's a really good ticket to have. If there's also like the mental part of betting, if you want to just make sure that you don't come out of this with nothing, then what I would do is, again, you could always wait for live, but maybe wait and see where this line goes. I would think you're only going to get UConn tickets. And then, maybe for a couple X of what you bet the future on, take a San Diego State side and try to middle it, right? And then you'll get some back and you could potentially hit both. That's one way to approach it as well. There's no blanket answer. It comes down to your own personal situation, your risk aversion level, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very hard to just answer blanket hedge questions, but a lot of times the answer is just let it ride. BJ, thoughts on the side or total? We'll also share just quick thoughts on, I think player props are starting to trickle out there. There's not much out there yet, but we'll just share any general thoughts you have on a player or two we're targeting with BJ, side or total thoughts.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Mike that I'm leaning towards the under here. Like the San Diego State defensive, performance, obviously defending the 3-point line throughout this entire tournament has been awesome, but Florida Atlantic did get quite a few open 3-pointers. Like San Diego State wasn't defending the arc like we've seen them in previous games. The Owls did go 9 of 22 from behind the arc, but the problem that Florida Atlantic ran into is that they just kind of really did struggle scoring inside. I mean, they only had 46% from inside the arc, but the same could be said for San Diego State. Like they weren't that great from the mid-range. They weren't that great at the rim. They just went 9 of 18 from beyond the arc. And I don't like betting with feelings, but it feels like San Diego State needs to have like an incredible offensive performance and basically sustain what they did at the beginning of the game against Florida Atlantic over an entire period of the game to actually beat this UConn team. So and asking them to do that is quite a bit because we've said many times, this for teams, this team has a liability. It's their offense. It's a lot of mid-range. It's a lot at the rim, which UConn is outside the top 300 in points per possession allowed from the mid-range, but they're one of the best teams in the country at defending at the rim. So it's very, very difficult for me to see how San Diego State overcomes and actually beats UConn. I'm kind of with you where it opened at 6. I would love to have it at 6, but now that it's got a 7.5, 8, there's no way I'm getting in front of, this UConn train right now.
Yeah.
But I do think, UConn does play a below average pace. They're 214th in adjusted tempo. So if San Diego State wants to play this in the half court, like UConn's totally fine playing in the half court. They're top 25 defense and points possession allowed in the half court. So I'm going to be with Mike. I'm going to be playing the under. I do have, along with our pockets, I do have a UConn 35-1 ticket. My personal situation, this is not like any, what you should do or whatever it is. I'm just going to hedge up to 20% of my winnings. That's how I feel right now. Like I'm very, very confident in UConn, but I also, like you said, it's like, I want to come away with at least something out of this.
Yeah.
You can find San Diego State at 3-1. So it's a decent hedge where you're not risking as much and you can still come away with something. So that's personally what I'm going to do from a hedge situation.
Yeah, the one way that I could, like, obviously UConn, it's one basketball game. Anyone can win one. I mean, we're like San Diego State could clearly win this game. It's a 7.5 $100, so they're not 30 $100. The one, UConn could have just a complete off shooting night that could miss everything. And the one way that I could see San Diego State winning this game, and maybe if you like San Diego State, we'll talk player props now. Matt Bradley has to go off. Like that's it. And UConn has so much length, but when Bradley's on, he's almost unguardable, right? He's making tough shots, step backs. Like doesn't matter how much length you have on him. He's hitting guarded shots, and he just catches fire. I think the only way San Diego State can win this game outright is if he goes off. So maybe you look at like Matt Bradley at MOP or over points. What would he be for most outstanding player? I don't know, 6-7-1, I think. Is that out there? Let's see.
Yeah, my only concern with that, because I would 100% agree with you and be in lockstep, other than the fact that he didn't hit the game-winning shot in the Final Four. So I feel like that's a big chip in terms of like going away from him in terms of the voting. I think he'd have to have kind of a transcendent 30-point game in an upset for him to get the MVP.
He is over
Yeah.
13 and a half points is his point total over under right now.
Yeah, maybe there'll probably be like a market on like leading score in the game. So if you like San Diego State, I think Bradley has to go for like 25 plus in this game, for San Diego State to pull off the outright upset. But from a player props perspective, let me see if there's all right, let me pull up the exact numbers. And this is going to set, if this analysis sounds very familiar, and it's pretty much the same exact handicap that I had for pack under. But Trammell, in 25 games, he made less than 2 threes. So he didn't have multiple threes. He only averaged 7 points per game. And when he hit in the 11 games, he made multiple threes. He averaged close to 16 points per game. Well, he's going up against arguably the best 3-point defense in the country when you look at percentage allowed and then also attempt rate allowed. Like, they don't allow you to take threes. And when you do take threes, they guard it extremely well because of their length, which I think is going to bother him. Like, he's just, you saw it even against FAU. You saw it with Pack against UConn. I think UConn's length is really going to bother him. And then what did we say the other day? Bradley, who seems to kind of get his groove back, the scoring onus falls off of Trammell when he's going, right? He was so off. His minutes were down. He just couldn't hit a shot that Trammell really had to score more. But I think he's going to be bothered by the length again here. I don't expect him to get his threes. And when he doesn't get his threes, he's just not scoring that much. So I'm going to be targeting another Trammell under. Mike, any thoughts on pretty bear market right now, but any player or two that you're targeting from a props perspective?
So just from an energy involvement standpoint, Donovan Clingan looked electric. He didn't end up stuffing the stat sheet, which is why this is number dependent. But if his points, rebounds, assists are anywhere south of 11.5, I'm going to go over. And the reason is that not only does he get involved, he's had some games with multiple assists. He clearly can scoop up some rebounds and, hit some when people are diving in, find him, right next to the basket for dunks. Also, this is a play. If Sanogo does get into foul trouble, all of a sudden his ceiling goes way up because he's playing well enough right now that I don't think the coaching staff has any issue upping his minutes from like 12 to 20 that quickly. So this is because it's such a low number. If it does hit the board at 11.5, I'm going to go over on Clingan as the player prop there.
So I'm pulling up, I like your thoughts there. And I'm pulling up as you're speaking, I pulled up the most outstanding player market on one book out here where Bradley's plus 550. Now Sanogo is minus 150. Is there, and then if you look at UConn on the money line, they're minus 340-ish. Mm-hmm. Is there a way that Sanogo and UConn wins and Sanogo doesn't get most outstanding player?
I think so. I mean, essentially, because from a voter perspective, think about it like this. Say this is a 6-point game or a 5-point game, and Hawkins hits like a back-breaking 3 or he scores 25 points. I think maybe from a voter perspective, it's like, yes, he did play incredibly well against Miami, but did they need him? Was there pressure? I mean, he was making wide open threes. It was kind of like laughable. They were joking about it after the game, as opposed to, did you step up in a clutch moment? Like, how much do the voters value that element of a statistical performance as opposed to just crushing a Miami team that was playing from double digits for most of the game?
Yeah, that's a good point on Hawkins. Hawkins actually has the second lowest odds at plus 340. So yeah, if he has a huge day from 3, and then hits a clutch shot late, you could see him getting it for sure. BJ, any player props that you're thinking about or targeting?
Yeah, I'm looking at Alex Caravan over 7.5 points right now. He's cleared this in 21 of his 38 games this season. He's probably UConn's best shooter. If you look at his effective field goal percentage is over 60%. He's shooting over 40% from beyond the arc. And, if UConn's really going to try to spread San Diego State out and force them to defend on the perimeter, he's somebody who always seems to find himself open and can be a big offensive threat. So especially with, Andre Jackson getting in foul trouble, Jordan Hawkins not being completely healthy, he's going to probably carry a little bit more of the offensive load. So I do like Caravana over 7.5 points.
Thanks. One final time to all of you guys. You make the show. Thanks, of course, to BJ and Mike. It was a pleasure, gentlemen. Thanks to our producers, David and Matt on the back end. Thanks to our video team. They all do an incredible job and don't get enough credit. We appreciate all of you Good luck on all of your wagers. One final game. Enjoy it. It's the last time we'll bet college football or basketball for the next 145 days, but who's counting? We'll see you next year. Thanks again for tuning in. Again, tell a friend, tell an enemy. Make sure you subscribe, unsubscribe, subscribe. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you next year. Cheers.